Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unlocked, where we talk about unlocking the potential of you, the people you work with, and the people you do life with. At the time of this recording, I'm offering all of you, yes, my lovely listeners, a free 15-minute communication coaching call. You come with some kind of communication problem, and I give you a solution. My calendar link is in the show notes, so check that out. Something has to die, and then you have to decide to let it go. That is one of the core messages you're going to hear from Alex Sabbag in this interview. Alex's story is maybe relatable to some of you, but it's her story and she tells it. Some of you may have no idea what it's like to go through what she went through, but you do have an idea of what it's like to get hit over the head with a 2x4, figuratively. And she talks about that as well. But the idea of being knocked down and how do we bounce back? How do we get up? What does it mean for us afterwards? Who are we afterwards? And what does it tell us about who we are? We're all going to talk about that on this. Alex has a really cool way of telling stories. And I was drawn in by just listening to her. And I hope you hear her heart and I hope you hear her soul, because it's part of, I think, the message that she's trying to get out there. Alex Sabbag is a best-selling author. She's a two-time business owner and an entrepreneur. Her most recent venture, Soul Dive Yoga, was founded in 2022 in Palm Desert, California. So you can go there and get some yoga lessons if you want. Seeking solace in the practice, she not only found healing, but also discovered a profound mission to share the transformative power of yoga with the world. Her debut memoir, Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep, is Alex's story of resilient triumph in and outside the studio, on and off of the yoga mat. Through her voice, she hopes to empower and inspire others to embrace life's changes, surrender to the divine redirects, and find greater purpose, peace, and presence. We're going to have a really good discussion. It's kind of somber at times, but very hopeful and very inspirational. So here we go. So good to have you on the show, Alex. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about. I want to hit on the idea of resilience. I think that is something that you know a little bit about, and I just want to get right into it. So let's talk about why we would even listen to you in the first place about that topic.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's nice to be here. We're asked to be resilient every day. I mean, whether we like it or not, the new beginning starts when we wake up. It can start after an hour workout class, a 10-minute breathing session. I mean, really, I say starting over is a soulful act of bravery, and we don't give ourselves enough credit that it's actually happening all the time throughout our life. But when the major life moments come, and I dub them 2x4 moments, when they come in and slap you upside the head so hard you can't see straight, and you sort of have this like Tweety bird dizziness, those are the moments that digging really deep and having that resilient attitude to come out on the other side, no matter how long that takes, is really important. And so that all came to me on my 33rd birthday. My boyfriend at the time was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And I went from girlfriend to fiance. He proposed the next day, to full-time caregiver. And, kind of in that moment, not only was his life changed tremendously, but my life was as well. And it was just one of these things that I had to really let go and let everything burn to the ground in order to create the space to rise and come out on the other side, which, for me took a number of years because I'm a little bit stubborn and I really like to grip with what I know and what I think should be there. But I think the biggest thing, resilience, is surrender. If you can surrender and let go, you give yourself the space to really be able to rise. And that's much easier said than done.
When I talk to people, I feel like they have something like this happen in their lives, whatever that 2x4 moment is in their lives. And they sit right up and they either, I don't know, they do a couple different things. I feel like they either just like sink, like it's just like bam, and they just go deep in the hole, or they fight, right? So I guess it's flight or fight, right?
Yep.
in that mode, or freeze. I mean, for you, which one was it?
So I like what you said. I believe we all have a choice. And I certainly had a choice, sink away into the abyss and drown my sorrows and, whatever Band-Aid effect I could have gotten my hands on. Um, Whether you choose that or whether you choose to move forward, the fight or flight is still at the table. So I'm a fighter. And so for me, this was very much, oh, you've got a 0.2% chance of beating this. I'm the woman for the job. I got it. And in that, just like pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think in healthcare and medicine specifically, having an advocate and fighting in that space is essential. Fight hard and don't fight fair is what I tell people who come to me and have, similar diagnosis or terminal situation on their hands. However, there comes a point when you're kidding yourself, and the inability to be honest about where you are in a certain space and time can really hinder, the healing and the acceptance and the moving forward, moving through. For me, I was unwilling to accept that this was what it was. I mean, I thought we had resources. I was in the healthcare space. I owned a PR agency that did fundraising and communications for nonprofits. So I knew, I feel like I became a doctor overnight. I mean, how egotistical and silly, but truly that's how I operated. Like, I got it. And what happens is you just go into full control, and we're controlling, you're not listening. So you get too noisy upstairs with your own agenda. You're not willing to, sit back and not only accept, but listen to what's real in the moment. I heard the other day, it's like when we have like the first thing we think in the morning, throw it out. It's really like the second or third that becomes, more the reality. And I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I think a lot of the times when thoughts come to the forefront, we have to do this like kind of bullshit meter on it. Number one, is it ours? And number two, is it relevant? And then you kind of sift through what the reality was. And for me, I was just unwilling to accept the truth of his condition, of his options, of his longevity. And, I think prognosis is kind of a sticky place to be, but I couldn't get in the space with him to have a real honest conversation because I was too busy pushing some agenda of like saving his life. That was kind of a long-winded answer for
Well, no,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
where was he on that? Like, you're in this, you got a 0.2% chance. Let's do this. Like, let's
Yeah.
crush it. I mean, what was he like?
He was such a beautiful soul who taught me a lot about meditation, and which is interesting now that I own a yoga studio and also teach back, these meditation practices. But this is 6.5 years ago. I mean, he brought meditation into my world. He was very mindful. He had, an amazing ability to be real. And as his significant other, I couldn't like get in the ring with him, which is something that I hope I've learned from and can do in the future if the opportunity or situation presents. But he was far more accepting of the truth than I was able to be. Call it immaturity or really lack of. I mean, nobody gets a rule book, or playbook for like, okay, here's what you do when you're 33 and have this sort of life altering moment come down. So yeah, but it's certainly one of the things that I've learned from.
So how did that complement? How'd you complement each other? I mean, with him being where he was and you being where you were, I mean, what did that do to the dynamic of your relationship?
Oh, crushed it. I mean, relationships get tasked in so many different ways, and I'm no expert on them because I'm 39 and still not married. So don't delete my number if you're coming to me for relationship advice, anybody. But we were only together for a very short amount of time before this happened. And we were newly living together and just everything was new. We didn't get the gift of time to fight about how to put the dishes away. So, like, when you put this type of real life stress on a new relationship, and I think age kind of comes into play too. I was younger. And, I don't know that, there was a big chance to see it through. And he, and we did it. I mean, I took care of him for a while, and his condition needed more than I could offer, as a person. So yeah, I mean, any relationship is going to go through it big time.
And what ended up happening to him?
He He died 2.5 years ago. He passed away on the day that I took possession of what is now Soul Dive Yoga in Palm Desert. So um, he lived over 4 years past diagnosis, and came back to be with his family in Southern California. And I saw him a couple months before he passed. So our relationship in sort of the friendship way was intact at the end, and that was nice to have those moments and at least have closure, this side of glory for the whole situation. But yeah, that's what happened.
So then that chapter ended that way. He lived 4 years past diagnosis. What do you attribute that to?
There's a lot you can do in medicine to beat odds. I think there's standard of care which doctors are going to offer to you based on whatever the protocols are for that particular cancer, and then you as the patient have access to clinicaltrials.gov to go kind of seek out other experts and opportunities that can speak to the disease you're fighting. So off-label drugs and clinical trials and things in other countries with other practitioners. I mean, other countries have very, very different laws, especially for terminal patients. So I think if you're listening and you have resources and you're facing something that you just feel like there's no hope here, I mean, check out Mexico, check out China. Their FDA is just different. They view terminal as like, well, why not try? And in here, there's more barriers around it. So I forgot what your question was.
No, it's just about what do you attribute
What do you
him?
attribute the life? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think there were some things found that were able to aid in the sustainability of life for a little bit. Quality certainly comes into play, but I think for a while he lived okay, all things considered. And again, his mindset was beautiful. It was grateful for what he did have, and that is such a tough. I mean, even as somebody who was in the room, I'm like, man, that takes a lot. That takes a lot of grit and grace to just simply accept where you are.
well, I wonder when I hear stories like this, and I'm not trying to like push the agenda of mindset around this type of thing, but um, I just how critical I feel like that really is when you're dealing with something like this. I know that this is literally a life or death situation we're talking about, and my audience and the things that generally talk about leadership and team development and culture and what we do around that really talks mindset and how we go into things, because I believe that you know I I'm just making a a statement here, but I'm imagining that if his mindset was in the gutter, if his mindset was no hope, his mindset was doom and gloom and whatnot, I'm sure at times it probably hit that. I mean, stress does that to us, but
Sure.
I would be willing to bet he probably wouldn't have lived that 4 years past diagnosis. I mean,
Yeah, we'll never know. But I mean, just to shift it to a more of a relevant kind of subject matter, when you look at death in general, death comes in many, many forms. Yes, terminal illness for sure. Like our minds can go there. But divorce is a form of death. Losing a job is a form of death. Moving across the country. I mean, all of these real life things hit. And one of the things that I speak to people about is the fact that your business is personal. So these 2x4 moments, as I coin it, and certainly mine is one example, but yours may be different. And someone over here might have a different, life altering moment where they wake up one day and go to bed the next. They come in many different ways, shapes, and forms. When they do happen, no matter what, whether it's divorce, illness, job, whatever it is, your mindset is everything. But I think instead of going in it with like these rosy colored glasses that it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, the mindset is reality. Like being authentic and true with what is right now, which is why this practice of assessing thoughts as they come through and being really straight up with yourself. Today might not be a good day, and it's okay to say that. And it's okay to say it, in real dialogue with coworkers, with peers, with the stranger in the coffee line. Oh, how you doing? We're all just like, good. Are you? It's okay to be like, today's hard. How's your day? It's okay. It's fine. It really is. It's okay to accept that it's not all rainbows and butterflies, someday, because we weren't really guaranteed that. No one showed up in our life and was like, you're going to love every moment. It's going to be great. It's going to be easy. Slide right through it. I mean, no, it's hard. It's hard work just to wake up and have the human experience. And it comes with a lot of life altering moments that we didn't see coming.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I mean, I would almost accept it as a challenge. Next time somebody's like, "Hey, Scott, how's it going today?" and it's really not going well, just be like, I don't know, today isn't the best. Like today, I mean, I'm not trying to get into like some deep, gloomy conversation with somebody, bring them down, but it's
Yeah.
like being real and authentic. I think we all desire that a bit, and I hear that a lot from team members. That
Yeah.
one of their biggest complaints about their leader is that they don't feel like they're genuine or authentic or
Yeah.
vulnerable in any way. I think leaders put up this front, and it's just like, just just connect, you know?
But be honest. I think we're all looking for less BS and more honesty, leader or not. One of the things that became really apparent to me is I published my book, Go on the Book Tour. I spent 6 months on the road, and it seemed like as I showed up in these spaces, and the book tour is very special, very personal, and just like it was just a really cool experience because it was people that I knew in my network hosting these gatherings for me. And it culminated by a really big brand hosting like the finale, which was just really, really sweet. By the end, it was almost like I was tapped to say, okay, people are just looking for, we're all kind of tasked with this like vulnerable, like just share. Like we're asked to be vulnerable in this world, but nobody wants to go first. So if we're all standing in the circle, it's like I put my hand up and said, okay, fine, I'll start. And by doing that and by showing up and sharing bits of my story, which by the way, I mean, the book is not all about death and dying. It's really not. My story is not anchored in his story. That is his. It was a moment that we shared, and it was redefining for me because I had the mirror lifted up to my face and asked, what the heck are you doing here? Like, what's your purpose? And so that's why it's very special. For me personally. But I think people just want to see somebody else go first because it's scary. It's scary to put yourself out there. So if you are, at the water cooler or in the coffee line and the day is not great, being honest doesn't mean you ruin their day. There is this call to hold space. We talk about it in yoga, and it's not exactly like a household term in real life, but just because you share with me that your day is not great doesn't mean that I should be like, oh man, like my day's not going to be good either. But I can say like, well, I'm having a good day, Scott. Like, is there something I could do to support you? And if we have that type of relationship where you're like, you know what, can I just bend your ear for 10 minutes? Can we go on a walk, or can we go grab a coffee? Or all of a sudden you're creating this moment for human connection. And if your coworkers, no matter what level, there is just this realness that comes between you that I think is really beautiful. And we have very little of those moments. Technology is in the middle. We're texting. We're not paying attention. We're not actually interacting with people the way we used to. So I would challenge anybody, just be honest.
So I mean, we talked about, your fiance's, what you attribute to his, living that long, past diagnosis. What do you attribute your resiliency to? I mean, you had to bounce back from that too. I mean, caregiving is no joke. I'm in a LinkedIn group with some people that really talk about caregiving. My mom is now being put in the position of caregiving more, and it's no joke. Like it takes a
Yeah.
toll on people. So you had to bounce back from that, and the emotional stress and trauma that comes from that. Like, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. And I will say, like, the National Caregivers Day is on February 21st. So, depending on when people are listening to this, maybe jot that in your calendar. But um, it's, moms are caregiving every day. People our age are starting to care for their parents. Seniors are caring for each other. There are people who signed up to do this for work, nurses and teachers. And so it really is everywhere. And there is, you know, if you are not whole and don't take care of yourself, there's no way you can show up well for other people. I became not whole because I only showed up for him. I put my career on ice. I dedicated all of my time, all of my mental space to, quote, saving his life. that wasn't my job. And and I was not honest with myself then, but I have to be honest with myself now. Like, it was not my job to save him. My job was to be his partner. And I had varying degrees of, success with that piece. But I had a moment, in the midst of his treatment. I was living in Chicago, and I had a senior dog at the time who was also on bed rest. So the two things I love the most in the world are, like, I have neurologists, by the way, and are on bed rest. You really can't make this stuff up. And I had all the alcohol taken out of my house, just, and so my neighbors had my tequila. And so I walked down, and my neighbor happened to be one of my good friends from high school. And so I make a margarita, and I've got the dog, and I go to this little patch of grass, and I'm sitting on this tiny wrought iron fence, and the dog is hobbling around. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, this is the bottom. Like, my life cannot get any worse. I don't have my career. I stopped, kind of put my company in the hands of the other women that worked for me. My friendships are dissipating. The love of my life is dying. My dog's not doing well. I am like a shell of a human. And I had no answers. I had no idea how long I would be in this space, but I did have the awareness that I was in it. And I'm really grateful for that, because at some point you have to wake up and accept where you are on whatever scale, it is. And I was at the bottom. I mean, I don't think losing a parent would have been as gut-wrenching as that season of my life. And I just sort of was like, okay, well, I'm here, and I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I know I'm not going to be here forever. And I know that it's not going, the other side won't appear unless I keep moving, which goes back to the original question. Do you fade into the abyss, or do you keep going? And I kept going. I was really involved in the yoga studio that was around the corner from my house. I used to do a lot of hot power yoga, and in this like kind of caregiving season, that completely changed for me. I had no power, but I kept going because I was given permission to show up in any way, shape, or form, just to be, whether I cried, whether I did every down dog or whatever, just to keep coming. And so I did. I just, I kept having these little downloads of like, okay, this is not what it's going to be like. It would be unfair to get married. This isn't you don't have to go down too. And that was a really tough decision, to step away from the relationship, even, given the circumstances, because I needed to put my life mask on first. And I think the resiliency comes through this process and practice that you do every single day. And I really, if nobody here rolls out a yoga mat, I don't really care. Pick something to do. If you like yoga, great. Obviously, I really like yoga. I own a yoga business. But if you like to walk, if you like to garden, if you like to journal, if you can sit still in meditation, any of these things that you adopt as a practice, my Pilates teacher yesterday was like, she has this whole red light situation at home. And she's like, I have my coffee for 15 minutes in silence, and my kids don't bother me when I'm in the red light. It's mommy's red light room, whatever it is. Like, just, you pick your thing that is your practice, which becomes your process. And what this does is carry you through the moments. Because when you think about the moments of your life, the joy and the celebration, those are feelings of anxiousness. The feelings underneath certain experiences are how we relate as humans. Just as, life-altering situations that give you anxiety, it feels the same in your gut. And so whether it's really, really good or really, really bad, having this like very simple practice to fall back on allows you something to keep waking up for. Takes care of yourself, keeps you moving forward. So you don't just stay in bed and, keep sobbing on the bathroom floor. There's plenty of time for that. And I encourage those moments too, because they're cathartic in their own way. But I just kept moving forward.
Can we talk about your book for a minute?
Totally.
Why'd you write it?
I've always known I had a book in me. So from my 20s, my mom is like, you need to write a book. And I was never energetically drawn to do it. Like, I probably could have had the Sex and the City dating expose that, or a blog that could have retired me by now. But it just didn't feel right. And it wasn't until I went through what I went through with my fiance that gave me this anchor of depth and relatability that allowed me to really reveal, who I am and what I've gone through. So the story with him is the lead, but there's lots of life lessons and family dynamics and dating exposés and the whole thing that's in this memoir. But when it was kind of coming to the completion, I asked myself the same question. And number one, I want people to know they're not alone. And I think when you experience anything in life, these like the tendency to isolate and push people away or trying to support you kind of becomes a default. I did it. I know a lot of people do it, but I can't say enough. You're not alone. And just because we don't have the same apples to apples experience doesn't mean you can't relate to the emotions underneath it. Number two, you have to laugh. Like things can't just be so heavy all the time. Even if you're in like literally the worst season of your life, everything's lit on fire, your whole world is flipped upside down. There's got to be some lightness, some area where you can laugh, where you can feel at ease. It's just so important. And number three, you have to keep going. And going does not mean you're, getting around or taking a pill to skip it all. Going means you are just going through and you're waking up one day after the next, put one foot in front of the other to move through the scenario. Nothing lasts forever. This whole concept of impermanence is equal parts good news. Like when you're in the bad season of your life, you love impermanence. This is great. This isn't going to last forever. I'll be out on the other side, whatever I am. When things are good and you're reminded of impermanence, that's a little tougher to accept. But the more we can just keep the practice, kind of underneath our life that we always fall back on, it sort of makes those highs and lows less jagged, brings a little more equanimity into the whole presence of your world.
So is the book kind of a glimpse into your life in a sense and kind of the things you've been through? And what do you want everybody to, yes, that you're not alone. Yes, that you've got to keep moving. Yes, that, this is part of life. But like the thing at the end, the emotion you want people to feel, what is that?
Okay, let's talk about the end. So
are you going to ruin the ending for us all?
No.
Okay.
I ruin the ending for myself.
Okay.
So right. I wrote the book fast. I'm a writer. I dropped into a little portal and this thing got cranked out and it was kind of a soup to nuts 4-month deal.
A lot of people hate you right now. I'm just saying.
That's okay. You know what? There are people who will write it for you. You don't have to write your own book to write your story.
No, I know.
This just happened to be my talent. And look, I was sitting on this idea for almost 20 years. It's like,
I get you. It took me like 7 to actually write mine. And I wrote it last year and it was like, I'm pumped. I just set a goal in 1 quarter. I got it done. And it was just like, I blew through it. So
timing is everything, as cheesy and cliche as it sounds. So I get the whole thing done and I didn't do the last chapter. And I had the gal who was my number 2 when I had my PR company, came back on and was kind of like my internal editor. I was also working with, another editor and had an author coach. Like I built a team around it. I wrote it, but I had support. And so I get it done and Ashley goes through it all and she's like, okay, it's great. Like just do the last chapter. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. A couple more days, a week. She's like, so this needs to be done so we can print it. Like, I'm not ready for it to be done. And she's like, why? What is it? And I was like, because I wanted this to end with that Instagram photo of me and my husband and my child. And I want the happy ending. That's how I want it to end. She's like, you are literally publishing this in weeks to get married and have a baby. Do you need me to walk you through the math? And I knew it. I knew that. But there was just always this, even though those photos on everybody's Instagram account around Christmas time aren't real, there's a million outtakes of the kids screaming and, yelling at Santa, whatever. It's like, that was the life I was always living for. And that was the hardest thing to let go of when I had to let it all go. So, she was right. It needed to be done. And so I just went about my life. Went out for dinner in San Diego with a dear friend here and was sitting at the bar at one of our favorite restaurants. I was actually at this restaurant last night. And he looked at me and was like, can you just tell me about your fiance? I was like, what? Why are we going there right now? And he's like, I just feel like I need a moment with you, like reflecting. Can you show me a picture? I'm like, sure. It's like whenever that happens, like you kind of go back through this like bodily response to that moment in time. So he's holding my phone, looking at the photos, and he starts to cry. And he is just like tears going in his wine glass. I'm having tears going in my wine glass. I'm like, what is going on here? And he was like, I can see how much he loved you. And it was just such a sweet moment because he also said, there will be somebody else who will love you just as much or more. I was like, talk about like needing to hear what you need to hear at the right time. So we dry our tears, we finish dinner and go home. And, I wake up the next morning and I do what I do most mornings. I have my phone, my journal, and my laptop. So I'm either going to write, I'm going to journal, or start to work. And I just got a ping that said, check your bank account. Okay. I open up my bank account, and in my business account, I had like $19,999.99. It was all nines and a one. 9 is the number that signifies beginning and endings. And I was like, if that's not some seriously strong angel communication, I don't know what is. I'm like, apparently everybody wants me to be done with this book. And so I did. I opened up my laptop, and in 30 minutes, I wrote the last chapter. And I share that story because you have to end to start over. You have to end. You cannot get into a meaningful relationship while you're still in an existing relationship. You can't really get the dream job if your current job is occupying all that space in your mind and body. It had to end. And once it did, and when I kind of got that last, like, well, how do you want to leave people? Very rising from the ashes. I want people to leave so lit up and stoked to go move through their own life. It's not about being, it's being inspired by my journey, but more so using my journey as a way to get inspired and empowered to keep going for you. There's so many different themes in this book. You want to talk about dating, you want to talk death, you want to talk yoga, entrepreneurship, working for a startup. There's so many things. It's not a one size fits all subject matter, which is why I think it's, good for everybody, if I will. But that's really it. I mean, I just like had this vision of like, okay, I did it. I rose from the ashes. And I remember the day that I woke up and my life felt lighter, where this wasn't just like this heavy burden or this cloud that just like weighed me down. It was on the morning of my 38th birthday. So from 33 to 38, I felt like I had just 100-pound weights on my back every day. And you can't really shake it because it's just not time. Like you will carry things through as much as you intend to let them go, intend to live lighter, stay in your practice to have more peace. You will wake up one day and it will shed. But it's not going to shed if you don't keep going.
That's so cool. And I think that how easy it is to forget that one day it'll be lighter. I think it's so crucial to have that hope and to remember, whether you have to do to remember that, whether it is writing it down, whether it is taking a picture of it and pinning it on your fridge, like those moments will help us bring us back and ground us in that. And I think that that's so cool to think about you and what you've been through. So Soul Dive, and where can people get it? You speak all over the place. I feel like I've just gotten a keynote address here. So, and the, wanting to get out there and get your message heard, people, I think, need to hear it. I think you're a great storyteller. So what can people do to do that? And what can people do to get the book?
Yeah, I want to answer all that, but I do want to go back to hope. And this
please.
is why there are some people, when you talk about, I think everybody's called into their purpose. Every single person listening, Scott, you have a purpose. I have a purpose. It is literally our life's work to figure out what that is. And if that sounds overwhelming, I'm sorry, but like, that's your job. That's your first job, is to figure out, what are you doing here? Why are you here? I can't necessarily help everybody figure that out, but I want to task you with that mission. When you do, your life is going to feel no less busy, but a lot more effortless. And the biggest piece of gratitude I have for this experience is it did drop me into my purpose. And my purpose was to share what I've been through to inspire and empower others to live with more peace, purpose, and presence in their own life. What people like me do is give hope. So whether you relate to me or not, there's a lot of other people out there sharing their story and experience so that you can see yourself in them. And I think that helps. Put that photo on your vision board. Just, put it in your journal or something that reminds you there are people out here who have moved through and overcome. You don't have to go down with this. The hard part about this is often, if not all the time, oftentimes something does have to die. Someone or something has to die. And you have to choose to let it go. And you can choose to put it on life support and keep it alive for a lot longer. And I'm not talking just humans. I'm talking relationships, careers, friendships. I mean, you can resuscitate that thing until you and whatever the thing is are blue in the face. I don't recommend it. The sooner you let go and the sooner you create that space physically, mentally, emotionally, go through the mourning, go through the grief. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's very hard. And I have an anecdote about freedom that I have not been prepared to fully share because it's too teary for me. But we have to choose to let it go. And that's really, really tough pill to swallow. But if I can inspire you, like what needs to go, let it. If your life is on fire, let it. Don't run back into the building. What are you, nuts? Get out. Let it go. Well, all your freedom exists on the other side of that. Okay. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
So, hey,
you can.
So good. And before you get on to your whatevers about how people get in touch with you, I think the word is permission. I actually have that in my purpose statement. That giving yourself permission, but also giving others permission to be who they were designed to be is something that's really important in life. And I feel there's that injustice in the world that we don't give ourselves that permission and we don't give others that permission either.
Yeah.
And I think that holds us back as a society in general. So I love that you said that earlier.
The permission thing is so huge. And I don't know if anybody's checked out Mel Robbins and her podcast, her book. She has the whole let them theory. Super helpful with giving permission. So
good.
Follow up reading, follow up listening,
follow up homework. Here we go.
Lots of homework. Okay. You can find my book on Amazon. It's called Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep. It looks like this. You can read more about me and see what I'm up to at soulfulalchemist.com. You can find me on Instagram at Alex Sabbag, and you can find all things Soul Dive Yoga. If you are in Southern California or visiting Palm Desert this winter, please come take a class with us. It is souldiveyoga.com.
And the things you put out, I mean, your storytelling, your writing, I assume come out in your email that you send out. It's probably not just like a, hey, buy this thing every week offer. I assume you put out some pretty great stuff.
Yes, thank you.
What do you write about in your emails?
It's called Into the Deep with Alex, and I call it my poetic wisdom drop. I'm actually not selling you anything. I don't have anything to sell you. I have a book, so you can buy that.
There you go.
It's $20. You can afford it, and you can come take yoga. But I don't talk about the yoga as much in my Into the Deep emails. But you can sign up for those emails on my Soulful Alchemist website. Please do that. I'm not wasting your time or your space with them. They get great feedback. I'll just put it that way. Not to toot my own horn, but I think they're pretty wonderful. So hop on that list and kind of get into the fold. There's going to be some exciting things coming from my end, including a retreat in the south of France, which I'll be announcing soon, and some other things as well.
Cool. You're a rock star. Thanks for bouncing back. Thanks for teaching us how to bounce back and what it takes. Talking to us. I think everybody needs to do that in every area of life, and this has been really, really good for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
Do you remember that moment in your life when things felt lighter? they just felt lighter. And that is such a beautiful moment. There are times in your life when they feel heavy, when your life just feels, like I can't get through this thing. I don't know how I'm going to overcome this thing. We all have an opportunity to choose, not necessarily the moment in our life, but how we're going to react as a result of that thing and what we're going to do as a result of that thing. I like this idea that when we're trying to control things, we're not listening. And that is because it's a moment of stress, a moment of anxiety, a moment of whatever, where we're really thinking about ourselves. If we're trying to control something, we're probably thinking about our own discomfort. And if I'm thinking about myself, I'm probably not thinking about you. And so when we think about bouncing back, when we think about our discomfort, when we think about those things that we're trying to do and control, take a moment, breathe, and understand what's happening outside of you. There may be something telling you something that you need to hear. I love this idea, her different forms of death. I never really thought about that. The death of a job, death of a marriage, not literal death of an individual, but death of things in our lives. What has to pass in order for something else to grow and something else to give birth and to grow and to be and to develop? What do we need to do to grab onto those things? This last thing hit me really hard. I love when she said, we're all asked to be vulnerable. You hear that a lot lately. We just need to be more vulnerable, be more vulnerable, be more vulnerable. But none of us want to go first. So the challenge, you go first. All of you out there listening, take a moment, be vulnerable, go first, see what happens. Alex, thanks for being on the show. If you want to find out more information about me or check out the show notes where there's going to be more information and links to the things referenced in this episode, visit skotwaldron.com. And lastly, I'm asking for a little bit of love, just a little bit. So please take a moment, follow, rate the show. The algorithms like that. It helps me get the word out. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And until next time, stay unlocked.